Hello, and thank you for joining us for the first ever CoffeeMakers Festival, a digital series of new and old works. Before getting started, we would like to acknowledge with respect that we are all working, living, and creating on Songhees, Esquimalt, Wasanich, Okanagan, Tawasin, and Musqueam land. We realize that we are uninvited guests on this land and that the Indigenous communities across Canada are still facing systemic oppression today. We would also like to thank the community for having supported Coffeehouse Theatre Society, and we hope to keep creating theatre in Delta for many years to come. Finally, please consider donating to Black Lives Matter Toronto and Vancouver through us so that we are able to match your donations up to $500. We will continue to make efforts to share resources and knowledge with our community to help make a change. It is no longer just enough to not be racist, we must all come together to be anti-racist. Our production of The Importance of Being Earnest runs at about 45 minutes with no intermission, and we will be hosting a 5-minute talkback after the presentation. Now, please get comfy in your homes, maybe grab some popcorn, this is a theater you're allowed to eat in, and get ready for a staged reading of The Importance of Being Earnest.
Aunt Augusta won't quite approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolen is perfectly disgraceful. It is almost as bad as the way Gwendolen flirts with you.
I am in love with Gwendolen. I've come up to town expressly to propose to her.
Yes, but before I allow you to marry her, you will have to clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Well, if you want to know, Cecily happens to be my aunt. Charming old lady she is too. Lives at Tunbridge Wells. Just give it back to me, Algie.
But why does she call herself Little Cecily if she is your aunt and lives at Tunbridge Wells? From Little Cecily, with her fondest love.
Some aunts are tall, some aunts are not tall.
Yes, but why does your aunt call you her uncle? From Little Cecily, with her fondest love to her dear Uncle Jack. Besides, your name isn't Jack at all. It is Earnest.
It isn't Ernest, it's Jack.
You have always told me it was Ernest. I have introduced you to everyone as Ernest. You answer to the name of Ernest. You look as if your name was Ernest. You are the most earnest-looking person I ever saw in my life.
Well, my name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Yes, but that does not account for the fact that your small aunt Cecily, who lives at Tunbridge Wells, calls you her dear uncle.
Well, old Mr. Thomas Cardew made me, in his will, guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily lives at my place in the country. In order to get up to town, I've always pretended to have a younger brother of the name of Ernest, who gets into the most dreadful scrapes. That, my dear Algie, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure and never simple. What you really are is a bumburyist. You have invented a very useful younger brother called Earnest in order that you may be able to come up to town as often as you like. I have invented an invaluable permanent invalid called Bunbury in order that I may be able to go down into the country whenever I choose. Bunbury is perfectly invaluable.
I'm not a Bunburyist at all. If Gwendolen accepts me, I'm going to kill my brother. Indeed, I think I'll kill him in any case. Cecily is a little too much interested in him. It's rather a bore.
Ah, that must be Aunt Augusta.
Good afternoon, dear Algernon. I hope you are behaving very well.
I'm feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
That's not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together. Won't you come and sit here, Gwendolen?
Thanks, Mama. I'm quite comfortable where I am.
I am afraid, Aunt Augusta, I shall have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight after all.
I hope not, Algernon.
I have just had a telegram to say that my poor friend Bunbury is very ill again. They seem to think I should be with him.
Well, I must say, Algernon, that I think it is high time that Mr. Bunbury made up his mind whether he's going to live or to die. This shilly-shallying with the question is absurd.
I'll speak to Bunbury, Aunt Augusta, if he's still conscious. And I think I can promise you he'll be all right by Saturday. I'll run over the program I've drawn out for you then, if you will kindly come with me into the next room.
Thank you, Algernon. It is very thoughtful of you.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I met you, I have admired you more than any girl I have ever met. Since I met you.
Yes, I'm quite well aware of the fact. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals, and my ideal has always to love someone of the name Earnest. There's something in that name that inspires absolute confidence.
You don't mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Earnest?
But your name is Earnest.
Yes, I know it is, but supposing it was something else. There are lots of other much nicer names. I think Jack, for instance, a charming name.
Jack? No, there's very little music in the name Jack.
Gwendolen, I must get christened at once. I mean, we must get married at once. Will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling.
Mr. Worthing, rise, sir, from the semi-recumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
I am engaged, Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Pardon me, you are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged to someone, I or your father will inform you of the fact. I have a few questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. While I'm making these inquiries, you, Gwendolen, will wait for me below in the carriage.
Yes, Mamma.
I feel bound to tell you that you are not down on my list of eligible young men. However, I'm quite ready to enter your name, should your answers be what a really affectionate mother requires. Are your parents living?
I've lost both my parents.
To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father?
I'm afraid I really don't know. I don't actually know who I am by birth. I was found.
Found?
The late Mr. Thomas Cardew, an old man of a very charitable and kindly disposition, found me and gave me the name of Worthing, because he happened to have a first-class ticket for Worthing in his pocket at the time. It's a seaside resort.
Where did the charitable gentleman who had a first-class ticket for the seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, Lady Bracknell. I was in a handbag. A somewhat large, black leather handbag with handles to it. An ordinary handbag, in fact.
In what locality did this Thomas Cardew come across this ordinary handbag?
In a cloakroom at Victoria Station. It was given to him in mistake for his own.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station?
Yes, the Brighton line.
The line is immaterial. Mr. Worthing, I confess I feel somewhat bewildered by what you have just told me. To be born, or at any rate bred, in a handbag, whether it handles or not, seems to me to display a contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life.
May I ask you then what you would advise me to do?
I would strongly advise you, Mr. Worthing, to try and acquire some relations as soon as possible.
Well, I don't see how I could possibly manage to do that. I can produce the handbag at any moment. I really think that should satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Me, sir? What is it to do with me? You can hardly imagine that I and Lord Bracknell would dream of allowing our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel. Good morning, Mr. Worthing.
Did you tell Gwendolen the truth about your being Earnest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear fellow, the truth isn't quite the sort of thing one tells to a nice, sweet, refined girl.
What about your brother? What about the profligate Earnest?
Oh, before the end of the week, I shall have got rid of him. I'll say he died in Paris of apoplexy.
But I thought you said that Miss Cardew was a little too much interested in your poor brother Earnest. Won't she feel his loss a good deal?
Cecily's not a silly romantic girl, I'm glad to say. She's got a capital appetite, goes long walks, and pays no attention at all to her lessons.
I would rather like to see Cecily.
And I will take very good care you never do. She is excessively pretty.
Gwendolen, upon my word.
Algie, kindly turn your back. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing. Earnest, we may never be married, but nothing can alter my eternal devotion to you.
Dear Gwendolen,
Your Christian name has an irresistible fascination. Your town address at the Albany I have. What is your address in the country?
The Manor House, Woolton, Hertfordshire.
How long do you remain in town?
Till Monday.
Good. Algie, you may turn around now.
I've turned round already.
Now there's a sensible, intellectual girl. The only girl I ever cared for in my life. What on earth are you so amused at?
Oh, I'm a little anxious about poor Bunbury. That's all.
If you don't take care, your friend Bunbury will get you into a serious scrape someday.
I love scrapes. They are the only things that are never serious.
That's nonsense, Algie. You never talk anything but nonsense.
Nobody ever does.
You must put away your diary, Cecily. I really don't see why you should keep a diary at all.
I keep a diary in order to enter the wonderful secrets of my life. If I didn't write them down, I should probably forget all about them.
Memory, my dear Cecily, is the diary that we all carry about with us.
Yes, but it usually chronicles the things that have never happened and couldn't possibly have happened. I believe memory is responsible for nearly all of the 3-volume novels that Moody sends us.
Do not speak slightingly of the 3-volume novel, Cecily. I wrote one myself in earlier days.
Did you really, Miss Prism? How wonderfully clever you are. I hope it did not end happily. I don't like novels that end happily. They depress me so much.
The good ended happily, the bad unhappily. That is what fiction means.
I suppose so, but it seems very unfair. And was your novel ever published?
Alas, no. The manuscript unfortunately was abandoned. I use the word in the sense of lost or mislaid. These speculations are profitless. I think I will have a stroll. I find I have a headache, and a walk might do it good.
You are my little cousin Cecily, I'm sure.
I believe you are under some strange mistake. I'm not little. In fact, I believe I am more than usually tall for my age. But I am your cousin Cecily. And you, as I can see from your card, are my Uncle Jack's brother. My cousin Earnest. My wicked cousin Earnest.
Oh, I am not really wicked at all, cousin Cecily. You mustn't think that I am wicked.
I hope you've not been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and being really good the whole time. That would be hypocrisy.
Oh, of course I have been rather reckless.
Uncle Jack won't be back till Monday afternoon. I know he wants to speak to you about your emigrating.
About my what?
You're emigrating. Uncle Jack is sending you to Australia. He said at dinner on Wednesday night that you would have to choose between this world, the next world, and Australia.
Oh, well, the accounts I've received of Australia and the next world are not particularly encouraging. This world is good enough for me, cousin Cecily.
Yes, but are you good enough for it?
I'm afraid I'm not that. That is why I want you to reform me. You might make that your mission, if you don't mind, cousin Cecily.
I'm afraid I've no time this afternoon.
You are the prettiest girl I have ever seen.
Miss Prism says that all good looks are a snare.
They are a snare that every sensible man would like to be caught in.
Oh, I don't think I should care to catch a sensible man. I shouldn't know what to talk to him about.
Oh, Mr. Worthing, this is indeed a surprise. We did not look for you till Monday afternoon.
I have returned sooner than I expected.
Oh, I trust this garb of woe does not betoken some terrible calamity.
My brother.
More shameful debts and extravagance.
Dead.
What a lesson for him. I trust he will profit by it. Were you with him at the end?
No, he died abroad. In Paris, in fact. I had a telegram last night from the manager of the Grand Hotel. A severe chill, it seems.
As a man sows, so shall he reap.
Oh, Uncle Jack, I've got such a surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room? Your brother.
Who?
Your brother Ernest. He arrived about a half hour ago.
What nonsense. I haven't got a brother.
Oh, don't say that. However badly he may have behaved to you in the past, he is still your brother. I'll tell him to come out.
We had all been resigned to his loss. His sudden return seems to me peculiarly
Good heavens!
Brother John, I have come down from town to tell you that I am very sorry for all the trouble I have given you, and that I intend to lead a better life in the future.
Jack, you're not going to refuse your own brother's high five?
Nothing will induce me to take his hand. I think his coming down here disgraceful. He knows perfectly well why.
Uncle Jack, do be nice. There is some good in everyone. Ernest has just been telling me about his poor invalid friend Mr. Bunbury, whom he goes to visit so often. And surely there's much good in one who's kind to an invalid?
Oh, he has been talking about Bunbury, has he?
I expected a more enthusiastic welcome, especially considering it is the first time I have come here.
Uncle Jack, if you don't take hands with Ernest, I will never forgive you.
Never forgive me?
Never, never, never.
Well, this is the last time I shall ever do it.
I can leave the two brothers together. Cecily, you will come with me.
Certainly, Miss Prism, my little task of reconciliation is over.
You young scoundrel, Algie, you must get out of this place as soon as possible.
I certainly won't leave so long as you're in mourning. It would be most unfriendly.
You have got to catch the 4-5 train, and I hope you'll have a pleasant journey back to town. This Bunburying, as you call it, has not been a great success for you.
I think it has been a great success. I'm in love with Cecily, and that is everything. But I must see her before I go. Ah, there she is.
Oh, I merely came back to water the roses. I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
He's going to send me away.
Then have we got to part?
I am afraid so. It's a very painful parting. I hope, Cecily, I shall not offend you if I state quite frankly and openly that you seem to me to be in every way the visible personification of absolute perfection.
I think your frankness does you great credit, Ernest. If you will allow me, I will copy your remarks into my diary.
Do you really keep a diary? I'd give anything to look at it. May I?
Oh, no. It is simply a very young girl's record of her own thoughts and impressions, and consequently, only meant for publication. When it appears in volume form, I hope you'll order a copy.
I love you, Cecily. You will marry me, won't you?
You silly boy. Of course. Why, we've been engaged for the last 3 months.
For the last 3 months?
Yes, it will be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
But how did we become engaged?
Well, ever since dear Uncle Jack first confessed to us that he had a younger brother who was very wicked and bad. I dare say it was foolish of me, but I fell in love with you, Ernest.
Darling, and when was the engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February last. Worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I determined to end the matter one way or another. And after a long struggle with myself, I finally accepted you under this dear old tree here. The next day, I bought this little ring in your name.
Did I give you that? It's very pretty, isn't it?
And this is the box in which I keep all of your dear letters.
My letters? But, my own sweet Cecily, I have never written you any letters.
You need hardly remind me of the fact, Ernest. I remember only too well that I was forced to write your letters for you.
Oh, do let me read them, Cecily.
Oh, I couldn't possibly. They would make you far too conceited. The 3 you wrote me after I had broken off the engagement were so beautiful and so badly spelled that even now I can hardly read them without crying a little.
But was our engagement ever broken off?
Of course it was. On the 22nd of last March. You can see the entry if you like. Today I broke off my engagement with Ernest. I feel it is better to do so. The weather still continues charming.
But why on earth did you break it off? What had I done? I had done nothing at all. Cecily, I am very much hurt indeed to hear you broke it off, particularly when the weather was so charming.
It would hardly have been a really serious engagement if it hadn't been broken off at least once. But I forgave you before the week was out.
What a perfect angel you are, Cecily.
You dear romantic boy. You must not laugh at me, darling, but it has always been a girlish dream of mine to love someone whose name was Ernest.
But, my dear child, do you mean to say you could not love me if I had some other name?
But what name?
Oh, any name you like. Algernon, for instance.
I don't like the name of Algernon.
Well, my own dear, sweet, loving little darling, I really can't see why you should object to the name of Algernon. It is not at all a bad name. If my name was Algie, couldn't you love me?
I might respect you, Earnest. I might admire your character, but I fear that I should not be able to give you my undivided attention.
Cecily, I must see the rector at once on a most important christening. I mean, on most important business.
Oh,
I'll be back in no time.
I was told Mr. Worthing would be back soon and I should wait here.
pray let me introduce myself to you. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew. What a name. Gwendolen Fairfax. Something tells me that we are going to be great friends. I like you more than I can already say, and my first impressions are never wrong.
How nice of you to like me so much after we have known each other such a comparatively short time. Pray, sit down.
I may call you Cecily, may I not?
With pleasure,
And you will always call me Gwendolen, won't you?
if you wish.
Then that's quite settled, is it not?
I hope so.
You are here on a short visit, I suppose.
Oh, no, I live here.
Really? Your mother, no doubt, or some female relative of advanced years resides here also?
Oh, no. I have no mother, nor in fact any relations.
Indeed?
My dear guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I am Mr. Worthing's ward.
Oh, it is strange. Ernest never mentioned to me that he had a ward. How secretive of him. He grows more interesting hourly. I'm not sure, however, that the news inspires me with feelings of unmixed delight. To speak with perfect candor, Cecily, I wish that you were fully 42 and more than usually plain for your age.
I beg your pardon, Gwendolen, but did you say Earnest?
Yes.
Oh, but it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who's my guardian. It's his brother, his elder brother.
Oh, Ernest never mentioned to me that he had a brother.
I'm sorry to say they've not been on good terms for a long time.
Ah, that accounts for it. And now that I think of it, I've never heard of any man mention his brother either. Cecily, you have lifted a load from my mind. It would have been terrible if any cloud had come across a friendship like ours, would it not? Of course, you are quite sure that it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is your guardian?
Quite sure. In fact, I'm going to be his.
I beg your pardon?
Dearest Gwendolen, there's no reason why I should make a secret of it to you. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
My darling Cecily, I think there must have been some slight error. Mr. Ernest Worthing is engaged to me.
I'm afraid you must be under some misconception. Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
It is certainly very curious, for he asked me to be his wife yesterday afternoon at 5:30. I'm so sorry, dear Cecily, if it is any disappointment to you, but I'm afraid I have a prior claim.
It should distress me more than I can tell you, dear Gwendolen, but I feel bound to point out that since Ernest proposed to you, he has clearly changed his mind.
If the poor fellow has been entrapped into any foolish promise, I shall consider it my duty to rescue him at once, and with a firm hand.
Whatever unfortunate entanglement my dear boy may have gotten into, I will never reproach him with it after we are married.
Do you elude me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement? You are presumptuous. On an occasion of this, it becomes more than a moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
Do you suggest, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Ernest into an engagement? How dare you? This is no time for wearing the shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
I'm glad to say I've never seen a spade. It is obvious that our social spheres have been widely different.
May I offer you some tea, Miss Fairfax?
Thank you, detestable girl. But I require tea.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar is not fashionable anymore. You have filled my tea with lumps of sugar. I am known for the gentleness of my disposition and the extraordinary sweetness of my nature, but I warn you, Miss Cardew, you may go too far.
To save my poor, innocent, trusting boy from the machinations of any other girl, there are no lengths to which I would not go.
From the moment I saw you, I distrusted you. I felt that you were false and deceitful. I am never deceived in such manners. My first impressions of people are invariably right.
It seems to me, Miss Fairfax, that I am trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt you have many other calls of a similar nature to make in the neighborhood.
Earnest! My own Earnest.
Gwendolen, darling.
A moment. May I ask if you are engaged to be married to this young lady?
To dear little Cecily, of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
I knew there must have been some misunderstanding, Miss Fairfax. The gentleman you are with is my guardian, Mr. John Worthing.
I beg your pardon?
This is my Uncle Jack.
Jack? Oh.
Here is Ernest.
My own love.
A moment, Ernest. May I ask you, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
To what young lady? Good heavens, Gwendolen!
Yes, to good heavens, Gwendolen. I mean Gwendolen.
Of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
I felt there was some slight error, Miss Cardew. The gentleman beside you is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrieff.
Algernon Moncrieff? Oh! A gross deception has been practiced on the both of us.
My poor wounded Cecily.
My sweet, wronged Gwendolen.
Mr. Worthing, there is just one question I would like to be permitted to put to you. Where is your brother Earnest? We are both engaged to be married to your brother Earnest, so it is a matter of some importance to us to know where your brother Earnest is at present.
Gwendolen, Cecily, it is very painful for me to be forced to speak the truth. However, I will tell you quite frankly that I have no brother Earnest. I have no brother at all.
No brother at all?
None.
I am afraid it is quite clear, Cecily, that neither of us is engaged to be married to anyone.
It's not a very pleasant position for a young girl to suddenly find herself in, is it?
Let us go into the house. They will hardly venture to come after us there.
Well, I must say that your taking in a sweet, simple, innocent girl like Miss Cardew is quite inexcusable.
I can see no possible defense at all for your deceiving a brilliant, clever, thoroughly experienced young lady like Miss Fairfax.
I wanted to be engaged to Gwendolen. That is all. I love her.
Well, I simply wanted to be engaged to Cecily. I adore her.
There is certainly no chance of your marrying Miss Cardew now.
I don't think there is much likelihood, Jack, of you and Miss Fairfax being united.
Algie, I wish to goodness you would go.
You can't possibly ask me to go without having some dinner. Besides, I have just made arrangements to be christened at 5:45 under the name of Earnest.
My dear fellow, the sooner you give up that nonsense, the better. I made arrangements this morning to be christened myself at 5:30. And I, naturally, will take the name of Ernest. Gwendolen would wish it. We can't both be christened Ernest. It's absurd. Why don't you go?
I haven't quite finished my tea yet.
They don't seem to notice us at all. Didn't you cough?
They're approaching. That's very forward of them. Mr. Moncrieff, kindly answer me the following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian's brother?
In order that I might have an opportunity of meeting you.
That certainly seems a satisfactory explanation, does it not?
Yes, dear, if you can believe him.
I don't, but that doesn't affect the wonderful beauty of his reply.
True. In matters of grave importance, style, not sincerity, is the vital thing. Mr. Worthing, what explanation can you offer me for pretending to have a brother? Was it in order that you might have an opportunity of coming up to town to see me as much as possible?
Can you doubt it, Miss Fairfax?
Their explanations appear to be quite satisfactory, especially Mr. Worthing's. But there are principles at stake that one cannot surrender. Which one of us should tell him? The task is not a pleasant one.
Could we not alternate words?
An excellent idea. I will begin. Your
Christian,
names
are,
still
an,
insuperable.
barrier.
Our
Christian
names?
is
That,
all
but
we
are
going
to
be
christened
this.
afternoon.
For my sake, are you prepared to do this terrible thing?
I am.
To please me, you're ready to face this fearful ordeal?
I am.
Gwendolen, what does this mean?
Merely that I'm engaged to be married to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
You are nothing of the kind. And now as regards Algernon. Algernon?
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
May I ask if it is in this house that your invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, resides?
No. Bunbury doesn't live here. Bunbury is somewhere else at present. In fact, Bunbury is dead.
Dead? When did Mr. Bunbury die? His death must have been extremely sudden.
Oh, I killed Bunbury this afternoon. I mean, poor Bunbury died this afternoon.
What did he die of?
Bunbury? Oh, he was quite exploded.
Exploded? Well, now that we have finally got rid of this Mr. Bunbury, may I ask Mr. Worthing, who is that young person whose hand my nephew Algernon is now holding in what seems to me a peculiarly unnecessary manner?
That lady is Miss Cecily Cardew, my ward.
I am engaged to be married to Cecily, Aunt Augusta.
I beg your pardon.
Mr. Moncrieff and I are engaged to be married, Lady Bracknell.
Mr. Worthing, is Miss Cardew at all connected with any of the larger railway stations in London?
Miss Cardew is the granddaughter of the late Mr. Thomas Cardew of 149 Belgrave Square, Southwest, Gervais Park, Dorking, Surrey, and the Sporran, Fifeshire, North Britain.
That sounds not unsatisfactory. 3 addresses always inspires confidence, even in tradesmen. But what proof have I of their authenticity?
I have carefully preserved the court guides of the period. They are open to your inspection, Lady Bracknell.
I've known strange errors in that publication. As a matter of form, Mr. Worthing, I'd better ask you if Miss Cardew has any little fortune.
Oh, about £130,000 in the funds. That is all. Goodbye, Lady Bracknell. So pleased to have seen you.
A moment, Mr. Worthing. £130,000? And in the funds. Miss Cardew seems to me to be a most attractive young lady, now that I look at her. There are distinct social possibilities in Miss Cardew's profile. Well, I suppose I must give my consent.
I beg your pardon for interrupting you, Lady Bracknell, but this engagement is quite out of the question. I am Miss Cardew's guardian, and she cannot marry without my consent, until she comes of age. That consent I absolutely decline to give.
Upon what grounds, may I ask?
It pains me very much to have to speak frankly to you, Lady Bracknell, about your nephew. But the fact is that I do not approve at all of his moral character. I suspect him of being untruthful.
Untruthful? My nephew Algernon? Impossible.
I fear there can be no possible doubt about the matter. This afternoon he obtained admission to my house by means of the false pretense of being my brother, and succeeded in alienating the affections of my only ward. And what makes his conduct all the more heartless is that he was perfectly aware that I have no brother, that I never had a brother, and that I don't intend to have a brother, not even of any kind.
Mr. Worthing, after careful consideration, I've decided entirely to overlook my nephew's conduct to you.
That is very generous of you, Lady Bracknell. My own decision, however, is unalterable. I decline to give my consent. And Miss Cardew does not come legally of age till she is 35.
That does not seem to me to be a grave objection. 35 is a very attractive age.
I couldn't wait all that time. I hate waiting even 5 minutes for anybody.
My dear Mr. Worthing, as Miss Cardew states positively that she cannot wait till she is 35, I would beg of you to reconsider your decision.
But, my dear Lady Bracknell, the matter is entirely in your own hands. The moment you consent to my marriage with Gwendolen, I will most gladly allow your nephew to form an alliance with my ward.
You must be quite aware that what you propose is out of the question.
Then a passionate celibacy is all that any of us can look forward to.
That is not the destiny I propose for Gwendolen. Algernon, of course, can choose for himself. Prism! Come here, Prism. Prism, where is that baby? 28 years ago, Prism, you left Lord Bracknell's house, number 104, Upper Grosvenor Street, in charge of a perambulator that contained a baby of the male sex. You never returned. A few weeks later, through the elaborate investigations of the Metropolitan Police, the perambulator was discovered at midnight, standing by itself in a remote corner of Bayswater. It contained the manuscript of a 3-volume novel of more than usually revolting sentimentality. But the baby was not there. Prism, where is that baby?
Bracknell, I admit with shame that I do not know. I only wish I did. The plain facts of the case are these. On the morning of the day you mentioned, a day that is forever branded on my memory, I prepared as usual to take the baby out in its perambulator. I had also with me an somewhat old but capacious handbag in which I'd intended to place the manuscript of a work of fiction that I'd written during my few unoccupied hours. In a moment of mental abstraction for which I can never forgive myself, I deposited the manuscript in the bassinet and placed the baby in the handbag.
But where did you deposit the handbag?
I left it in the cloakroom at one of the larger railway stations in London.
What railway station?
Victoria, the Brighton line.
I must retire to my room for a moment.
Jack seems strangely agitated.
This noise is extremely unpleasant. It sounds as if he was having an argument. I dislike arguments of any kind. They are always vulgar and often convincing.
Oh, the suspense is terrible. I hope it'll last.
Is this the handbag, Miss Prism? Examine it carefully before you speak. The happiness of more than one life depends on your answer.
Yes, it seems to be mine. Yes, here's the stain on the lining caused by the explosion of a temperance beverage, an incident that occurred at Leamington. And here, on the locker, my initials. Oh, I am so delighted to have it so unexpectedly restored to me. It has been a great inconvenience being without it all these years.
Miss Prism, more is restored to you than this handbag. I was the baby you placed in it.
You?
Yes, Mother.
Oh, Mr. Worthing, I am unmarried.
Unmarried? Oh, I do not deny that that is a serious blow. But after all, who has the right to cast a stone against one who has suffered? Cannot repentance wipe out an act of folly? Why should there be one law for men and another for women? Mother, I forgive you.
No, Mr. Worthing, there is some error. There is the lady who can tell you who you really are.
Lady Bracknell, I hate to seem inquisitive, but would you kindly inform me of who I am?
I am afraid that the news I have to give you will not altogether please you. You are the son of my poor sister, Mrs. Moncrieff, and consequently, Algernon's elder brother.
Algie's elder brother? Then I have a brother after all. I knew I had a brother. I always said I had a brother. Algie, you young scoundrel, you will have to treat me with more respect in the future. You have never behaved to me like a brother once in all your life.
Well, not till today, old boy, I admit. I did my best, however, though I was out of practice.
My own. But what own are you? What is your Christian name now that you have become someone else?
Aunt Augusta, at the time when Miss Prism left me in the handbag, what name was I given?
Being the eldest son, you were naturally christened after your father.
Yes, but what was my father's Christian name?
I cannot at the present moment recall what the general's Christian name was, but I have no doubt he had one.
Algie, can't you recollect what our father's Christian name was?
My dear boy, We were never even on speaking terms. He died before I was a year old.
I have no doubt his name would appear in any military directory.
The army lists of the last 40 years are here. M. Generals, Marksby, Migsby, Mobbs, Moncrieff, Lieutenant, 1840, Lieutenant Captain, Lieutenant Colonel, Colonel, General, 1869. Christian names? Ernest, John. I always told you, Gwendolen, my name was Earnest, didn't I? Well, it is Earnest after all.
Yes, I remember now that the general was called Earnest. I knew I had some particular reason for disliking the name.
Ernest, my own Ernest. I felt from the first that you could have no other name.
Gwendolen, it is a terrible thing for a man to find out suddenly that all his life he has been speaking nothing but the truth. Can you forgive me?
I can, or I feel that you are sure to change.
My own one.
My nephew, you seem to be displaying signs of triviality.
On the contrary, Aunt Augusta, I've now realized for the first time in my life the vital importance of being earnest.
Okay. And bow. Great job, everyone.
So if people want to stay around, we're going to do a 5-minute talk back about the show now.
Mm-hmm. Should we start by going around and introducing ourselves?
Sure.
Syrah, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'm Syrah. Hi, I played Cecily Cardew. I'm going to pass it to Syrah.
I'm Jordan. I played Algernon Moncrieff.
I'm Sean. I played Jack Worthing / Ernest. Ernest, yeah.
I'm Camryn. I played Lady Bracknell.
I'm Katie, and I played Gwendolen Fairfax.
I'm Bryn. I played Miss Prism.
And I'm Kate, and I was the stage manager, and the technician. Okay. So if anyone has any questions that was watching, feel free to comment them, and we'll do those. But to start us off, what's it like acting on a video call instead of in person?
I actually really liked it. I feel like with working with a new medium, there's an opportunity to find new nuances in the script you're working in, and that was really exciting.
It was weird. It was weird.
I'm going to say the same thing. It was definitely a very different experience from what I'm used to, which is usually being on stage and having an audience in front of me instead of just having, a computer screen.
Mm-hmm. It was really interesting, doing connections, because obviously when you're in person, it's so much easier to, actually, make eye contact or, touch someone and just, make a connection. So it was really interesting kind of learning how to do that over a video call.
I did want to mention that not everyone in this cast actually knows each other in real life.
Yeah.
Myself, Camryn, Bryn, and Sean, and Kate were all involved in the original production of this, but Katie and Jordan are both from people that I met at UVic, and they're wonderfully talented people, but they don't know anyone else.
Yeah, so doubly thank you guys for agreeing to be part of this. Okay. Syrah, what was our second question?
Second question, I can get it up right now.
What are the differences between this production and the one we did?
Oh, yeah.
As someone who wasn't on the first production, I'll handle it.
Go ahead.
No, totally kidding.
I mean, obviously we didn't have any sets.
Yeah, I think the main difference would be the fact that it's digital or virtual.
It's a shortened version, so there's a lot of the dialogue and mini monologues from the first one that weren't included in this one. But yeah, because the script that Syrah and Kate originally found for this one was quite like bare bones, and so then they added some more of the comedy and stuff into it to make it a bit more lively, like it was in our original production.
Yeah, we didn't. Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah, you go first, Kate.
I
Okay,
just
sure. Kind of just being forced to sit down and not have like a stage to play with, like more emphasis to put on our voices and our like expressions. So that was something that was new to me.
Yeah, there was a lot of physical comedy in our first version of this that we weren't quite able to do. Like Jack kind of flopping about the stage, trying to mourn his brother, was a bit more controlled in this setting.
I'll say another big difference is that we don't have a Chasuble or Lane or Merriman in this one, which is a real shame. But yeah, but we had to cut it down to make it not so long.
Yeah.
Oh, here's a question from Lisa, which is my mother. Thanks, Mom. How does it feel to not have an audience reacting in real time? Did you imagine people laughing?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because usually in like live theater, you're feeding off the audience's like energy even. So for this, we didn't have that. So it's definitely like a big difference, and that's a big difference from like when we first did the production as well. I feel like for me, since I knew how the audience reacted in our first production, I was able to take like that knowledge into this production, which was really helpful for me.
Yeah, it was also like because we weren't getting the energy from the audience, it was a lot more I found playing off of each other's energy and kind of trying to keep ourselves up the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be very easy to just like, especially if we're like reading the lines, very easy to just kind of like reset into like just like not on stage mode, like just kind of like chill reading when it's theater, so you have to have lots of energy, especially with this one. It's very like all the characters take themselves very seriously. You have to be very dramatic like that. So yeah.
There's another question from Lauren. Thanks, Lauren. Why did we choose the importance of being earnest?
Because it's silly, and we also have already done it once.
Yeah, so I guess the reason we chose it originally as the first Coffeehouse play was because, number one, it's in the public domain, so we don't have to pay for rights. But also, it's a great play. And I think we were in grade 12 at the time, or most of us. And you guys were doing it in your drama class, right?
Yeah, so the senior drama class at SDSS also did like I want to say like a 20-minute version of this show.
Yeah.
And then previously, Kate and I had studied it in our English class, so we kind of had that background knowledge as well.
Yeah. And it's just really funny.
Good. It's so good.
And the language is so good, and the characters are so interesting.
Yes.
To
Yeah.
dive into.
Yeah, this is a play that I would definitely do again and again. Question for Camryn specifically from Jasmine. Jasmine, who is one of our featured playwrights next week. What about it like... Sorry. What about it like doing your actor's work for your character of Lady Bracknell? So what's your character work like?
Oh yeah. I remember when I was doing my character work back in 2018 during our production, I really studied Judi Dench's portrayal of Lady Bracknell in the film version a lot, because she did a great job in that, and that really helped me to have that as an example. And then just like really diving into the language of the text, because it's so well written and like it's so juicy that there's like so much you can pull from it, and there's so many like layers to the text as well. So it's such a treat to be able to work with something that's so well written.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay, this is going to be the last question, and then we're going to have to go. What is it like stage managing a production like this? What did my job feel like? It's different in some ways, and then there's also similarities. So obviously the big difference is there's no stage. And I'm kind of doing everything like backstage. So I'm running the Facebook live stream and also the software that we're using called OBS, and then also we're all on a Zoom call. And there were a couple of sound effects in this one that I had cues for. So that was like my main stage management thing. So even though the physical space is not there, it's still the same idea that you're managing people, and you have like a hand on everything that's going on. And you're like kind of like the puppet master, I guess. So it's different, but it feels like the same spirit. Thank you. All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.